Hi friends, I'm Les Mood, your host. Welcome to GreenTech Talks, where we have conversations that empower, inspire, and enroll. Today we're at Cal State University, Bakersfield, and we have a special guest, Shiba Bhowmik, CEO of SineWatts Incorporated. Welcome to the show, Shiba.
Hi Les, thank you for having me here. What a beautiful day and a great location.
Absolutely, thanks for coming. And so the first question is, what is something you can share about yourself that maybe your colleagues don't know or the world doesn't know about you?
Our friends probably know that I'm from India. What they probably don't know is that I grew up in a family or had the unique opportunity to have been born into a family where we had like 17 cousins. And it was an incredible experience where my granddad, especially along with my grandma, made sure that, we always cultivated the culture of taking care of the family, the friends, and the extended neighborhood and the community. So I try to embody that feeling and the same knowledge that we have gathered over the years and try to cherish that through anything and everything that we do here.
Very nice. Yeah, community is always good. And your history there in India, where did your journey begin in the green tech space with technology?
My journey in the green tech space actually began in India, and as I was wrapping up my undergraduate days, that led me to pursue more power electronics driven opportunities, particularly for motor drive applications, for various different applications, not just for the propulsion in those days, propulsion of electric vehicles, but there were other applications for motor drive, like paper mills and many other things that needed motion. Long story short, I finished my PhD in wind power. Believe it or not, we were developing a new kind of a wind turbine generation system, primarily with electrical driven system. And then we, in a few years' time beyond that, I was working on power electronics for photovoltaic applications. These are the early days of photovoltaics, but a lot of the behind the meter systems is what it started off with, and then the industry went on to front of the meter or large scale solar systems. But I was part of the early days of behind the meter solar development for power electronics. So that's where it all started. And then since then I have been in renewable energy, and in between I also was part of flywheel energy storage systems in Texas.
So full circle from wind to solar, now storage. So what are you doing these days to advance technology at SineWatts?
We have without getting into the core aspect of the technology itself, we have an innovative way of developing the power electronics solution that seamlessly integrates photovoltaics to the grid for behind-the-meter systems primarily, which can also be applied to large-scale solar power plants. And the same topological power electronics framework is also applicable for electric vehicles. And in part of the electric vehicles, it is profoundly impactful because it makes the electric vehicle for propulsion applications of the electric vehicle, and also the powertrain for powering the electric vehicles and powering buildings, and outside the electric vehicles, powering buildings and other infrastructure like the grid, and in certain cases, powering up your neighbor's vehicles, for that matter. So it can power up the electric vehicle both in DC and also in AC format.
Absolutely. So you've been a part of the early developments of the renewable energy industry, and the intermittency of the grid is an issue, and now the solutions you're working on to help work with that. So what are some of the struggles that you've been a part of and the triumphs along the way in your journey that you could share?
Well, I take it everything, even the setbacks that we encounter are learning experiences. So I would probably categorize most of my encounters in the journey or the stops along the journeys to be growth towards the triumphs, so to speak. So the biggest triumphs that we have been fortunate and accomplished so far have been quite a few of the DOE fundings that allowed us to develop the technology from the core paper applications, the paper implementations, computer implementations into field validation. And along that same path, getting to the field validation, we built up a nascent team from ground up organically, working with universities and bringing in undergrad and graduate students to work on the team and work on the platform, who by themselves have become power electronics experts that have probably flourished in many other organizations today. So I take all of those as extremely beneficial for society, and it's humbling for us to be able to part of that entire journey and contribute to society in that way.
So you've been a student, you've taught, and you've been, in the development side of the industry. What kind of advice would you like to provide to the industry, which you could share with the GreenTech community?
Well, of course, we are steadfastly going towards removing fossil fuel and decarbonizing our energy structure. So that's obviously happening. In the same spirit of doing that, we need to bring the newer generation, the younger generation into the fold so that they can take the mantle and run with it when we are going to be retiring, right? So that aspect has to be happening. What we also find is that a significant amount of the innovations, the physics, the chemistries that have been innovated and developed in the last century can be recultivated and applied towards the future that we are all striving to achieve for ourselves and also for our future generation. So those are the two primary aspects that I would probably focus on, is to recultivate all that knowledge, the thermodynamics, the laws of electromagnetics. Those need to be recultivated and probably promulgated into the next generation, and also bring up the new generations of scientists and engineers to take us into the new frontiers.
Absolutely. So would you say it'd be fair to say first principles first?
Yeah, I mean, so first principles definitely help the process because our foundational physics is still the same. We haven't invented a new physics, so to speak. Now we can create and build on those. We are standing on the shoulders of the great innovators of the past. And so the first principles are definitely important. Very well put, Les.
Absolutely. So the next part of the interview is really a thought experiment. This is where the thought experiment comes in to really cast aside all doubt, all roadblocks and uncertainties associated with these questions, to think, with unlimited possibilities with these questions. So first question's really easy. What is some of the low-hanging fruit that we could bite into as professionals or people to advance sustainability or technology?
The lowest hanging fruit probably would be to double down on innovation. Of course, we have to deploy quite a bit because we are also transitioning from the fossil fuel, as I mentioned already. We have to deploy the existing technologies, and we have to make sure that we are making the transition and not losing steam in gaining the speed, getting to where we want to achieve or where our destination needs to be. But at the same time, we also have to double down or maybe triple down on innovation, on those same first principles as we talked about, but trying to make it such that our footprint is the smallest and our material consumption is also significantly lower. Significantly. We are talking about orders of magnitude lowering of material consumption. And so that is where we would have to put in a lot of our effort. I wouldn't necessarily call it the lowest hanging fruit, but nonetheless, because of the innovation potential of this generation developed over the previous centuries and the last few decades, we have the capabilities to make it happen.
Okay, so speaking of making it happen, what are some of the things that we should not avoid and some things that we should make happen in the transition?
Well, we should not definitely become complacent that we have achieved everything that needs to be done to make this transition. As a matter of fact, let's just quickly analyze, and maybe I'm becoming a little too technical for this discussion here, but nonetheless, the energy density of fossil fuel is order of magnitude higher than that we can deliver with our present-day batteries or even with solar photovoltaic material content. So that is a fact. And to overcome that fact, there are two pieces, two levers that we really have. One is extreme and significant gains in energy efficiency, and the other is material reduction and the material consumption reduction, which is dematerialization. So which means, we still have to do considerable amount of innovation to be able to bridge that gap of energy density between fossil fuel and renewable energy.
Absolutely. So speaking of dematerialization and opening up opportunity to a broader market, what role can communities play, or what role can technology play in communities in the energy transition?
I think we are making a full circle here in a way. Going back to that conversation of bringing up the younger generation and making them be the torch holder for the next generation, right? So that is where the community plays the role. The basic understanding doesn't have to be, everybody doesn't have to be the scientific knowledge base to make this transition. Yet people need to understand the basics, first principles of the differences, why fossil fuel won over everything else over the last few centuries, and why we adopted fossil fuel for such a long time was purely because of energy density. And so now we want to indeed decarbonize our energy content or our energy production and energy consumption world. But at the same time, we want to do that with the least amount of material, because if we use a significant amount of material, we will lose the decarbonization effort. So if the community understands this, if the community champions that, that's when we get the next generation of leaders to come from and helps the process.
And in this process, at the end of your process, from all of the work you do, then you leave behind, what would you hope to see for the world as a result of your efforts, or those that you're working with in your community?
Well, so we are striving for the next generation of platforms, both in terms of how we use power, how we consume power, and how we generate power. Our vision of the world, for SineWatts that is, our vision of the world is local power generation, local consumption, and local utilization of power. So in that sense, what we want to do is making every homes and every vehicles become the power generation source and the power consumption source, because we live, work, and play locally, and in those homes and in those offices where we work. So our objective is to drive innovation and the commercialization that is required to deliver those vehicles and those homes of the next generation that makes this world a much more sustainable and much more friendly, community-oriented place for everyone to live and cherish.
So speaking of everyone, do you think that a just and equitable energy transition is possible, or a so-called transformation? And if so, how?
Well, it is absolutely possible. And if anything, this is the time to probably make it happen. There's an energy crisis in Europe and globally, we already know that. And indeed, that energy crisis can be solved with extreme amount of energy efficiency gains, and also with making sure that we get the highest capable systems delivered so that we can reduce the consumption and reduce the material content. Now, with respect to an equitable redistribution of energy and the redistribution and utilization of energy, it actually starts with the community, and it starts at the grassroots, so to speak. So if we architect our systems keeping the people first and people-centric solutions, we will have the solutions that saves the planet at the same time. That's what our learning and what we have understood so far.
So it would be fair to say, in order for a just and equitable transition to happen, that we have to put the people first.
That is the right way to probably put it, and that's what we believe would be the right solutions, starting with the grassroots level, starting with the homes, the vehicles, be the part of the grid, making the grid more sustainable and more equitable for everybody.
Awesome. So where can people find you and SineWatts?
Our primary presence is on the internet, obviously. You can reach me by SineWatts.com or through LinkedIn, where we have a significant amount of presence, at SineWatts' webpage on LinkedIn, or on my personal webpage at Shiba Bhowmik or Shibashis Bhowmik. So.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us. Thank you for coming to Bakersfield, and I hope you've enjoyed Cal State, and looking forward to hearing more about the journey and seeing SineWatts continue to move forward.
Thank you, Les. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us on GreenTech Talks. That's it for conversations that empower, inspire, and enroll. Make sure to like, comment, share, and follow, and we will see you soon.